Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive accountability crisis in the Indian state of Meghalaya. We're talking about hundreds of crores of public money, that's your money, that has, well, essentially vanished. So how does something like that even happen? Let's get into it.
Okay, let's start with a question that really gets to the heart of the problem here. In the business world, if an accountant just stopped submitting financial reports for years, you'd call it fraud, right? It would be a huge red flag. And yet, when government departments do the exact same thing with huge amounts of public money, nothing seems to happen. We're going to follow this trail and see where it leads.
So, where do we even begin with this mystery? Well, let's start with the money itself. We know a huge amount of public funds, money that was supposed to be for projects in Meghalaya, is just off the books. But what are we really talking about, numbers-wise?
We are talking about hundreds of crores. Now, to put that in perspective, 1 crore is 10 million rupees. So we're looking at sums that are tens, if not hundreds of millions of US dollars. That's money that could have built so many new schools, hospitals, roads, you name it. This is public money intended to make people's lives better, and right now, nobody knows where it went.
So you have to ask yourself, how can a giant pile of cash like that just disappear from the official records? Well, the answer isn't in some complicated scheme. It's actually in the paperwork that's gone missing. There's a critical paper trail here that has just gone completely cold.
And that missing piece of the puzzle, it's a document called a Utilization Certificate, or a UC for short. The easiest way to think about a UC is that it's just a receipt. It's the official proof a government department has to show to say, hey, we got this money for this project, and yep, we actually spent it on that project. It's like the most basic, fundamental piece of the accountability puzzle. And this is where you can really see the problem, right? The difference between how things are supposed to work and what's actually going on is just huge. The process should be simple. You get the grant, you finish the work, you hand in the receipt within a few months. But what's happening is that these UCs, these receipts, are being held back for years. And that's exactly where the paper trail goes from cold to completely dead. Okay, so you might be thinking, is this just speculation? Well, no, not at all. In fact, we have an expert witness in this case, and it's none other than the top financial watchdog for the entire country. And that expert witness? It's the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, also known as the CAG. Now, this is the independent body that audits all government spending. What they say goes. Their reports are the final word on how the government is handling its finances. And what they found in Meghalaya, well, it's pretty damning.
So the first thing the CAG pointed out was the poor quality of accounts. What that really means is that the books are a complete mess, they're unreliable, they're full of holes, they're basically useless. And that, right there, is your first giant red flag. But it gets so much worse. The CAG also found widespread non-compliance with financial rules. And this is a huge deal. It means departments aren't just being disorganized or sloppy, they are actively and consistently breaking the rules, the very rules put in place to prevent this kind of thing from happening. This quote from the CAG really puts the scale of the problem into perspective. Reconciling accounts, that's just basic bookkeeping, right? It's just making sure the numbers add up. The CAG found that some departments haven't done this simple check for multiple years. This isn't a one-off mistake. This is a system that is fundamentally broken. So let's be absolutely clear here. The country's top auditor has been flagging these exact same issues year after year after year. It's a well-documented pattern of delays, bad accounting, and straight-up rule-breaking. The alarm bells have been ringing for a very long time, and it seems like nobody is listening. So this brings up a huge question, right? Is this just mind-boggling incompetence, or is something else going on? Because when you look at the pattern, it really starts to feel less like sloppiness and a lot more like a deliberate strategy. And if you talk to any forensic accountant, they'll tell you this isn't just a pattern of bad work. This is basically a step-by-step guide on how to steal public money. First, you get the funds. Then, you deliberately delay the paperwork, the UCs. That makes it impossible to track the spending, which means you can avoid accountability. Think about it. If you never have to actually prove where the money went, no one can ever prove you stole it. And here's a really simple example of why this should matter to you. Let's say the government approves a grant to build 10 new schools. Great, but without that UC, that official receipt, there's no way to prove that 10 schools were actually built. Maybe they only built 5, and the money for the other 5, well, it just disappeared.
Without the paperwork, there's just no way to know for sure.
All of this leads us to the final part of the story. And honestly, it's the most disturbing part. We have the missing money. We have the broken rules. We even have a clear motive. And yet, the whole case just gets swallowed up by this giant accountability black hole.
Let's just put this in perspective. Think about it. If you or I didn't file our taxes for a few years, what would happen? The tax department would be all over us, right? Penalties, investigations, the whole deal. And yet, a government official can fail to account for crores of public money for years on end. And what happens? Absolutely nothing. Zero. Consequences.
And so that leaves us with the big unanswered question at the end of all of this. It's the core of the problem in Meghalaya, but it's a question we could ask about public finance everywhere. When there's clear, documented, systemic failure to account for our money, year after year, why isn't anyone held responsible? It's a question that, honestly, every single one of us should be demanding an answer to.